Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you all back to the inaugural Protect Us Kids virtual conference. My name is Russ Cohen, and I'm fortunate enough to serve as a volunteer for the Protect Us Kids organization. Our next speaker is Diego Luque, and just to give you a little bit of background on Diego, Diego is a partnership and engagement specialist in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Blue campaign. He focuses on preventing human trafficking and reducing victimization in vulnerable communities. He's been with DHS for about 3 years, and during those 3 years, he conducted over 100 trainings and secured key public-private partnerships. He's worked in the Department of State's Bureau of Consular Affairs and has extensive experience in both nonprofit and private sectors. He holds a bachelor's degree in international relations and is a master in public policy from George Mason University. Diego, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you to Protect Us Kids for really a meaningful partnership where we're able to work together, not only to raise awareness, but to also find ways that we could really try to prevent human trafficking, prevent youth exploitation, especially in those vulnerable communities around the United States. So yes, today I have an action-packed sort of training on really how to talk to youth about human trafficking, how to have this very difficult conversation with a young person in your life, somebody that you might be working with through a mentorship program. You might be a teacher, you might be a social worker. So in a variety of different capacities, this conversation is going to be hard to have with any young person. They're going to tune out from conversations. They're going to say, this is not happening to me. And very well, it might not be happening to them. But it's important to at least establish a foundational element of what human trafficking is, because all of us have a role to play in order to prevent this crime of human trafficking from happening to any community. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. All right. I hope everybody could see that. Okay, so let's go ahead and thank you for the thumbs up. Perfect. All right. So I want to just first get started with who is the Blue campaign. A lot of people do not know who we are. And hey, that's fair. We are a fairly new office when it comes to relevancy of other offices in Homeland Security. We weren't an official program until 2019. So if you don't know about Blue campaign, that's all right. We're a national public awareness campaign aimed at providing awareness trainings and awareness materials to the general public and really a bunch of different industries, law enforcement, community organizations. We have two goals: trying to prevent the crime of human trafficking, and we are trying to protect those that are already being exploited. And how do we do that? Number one, teaching people about human trafficking. We go over everything about what is human trafficking, how does it look like, where are traffickers reaching victims. Number two, we're going over what are some possible indicators that a person might find in a potential victim of human trafficking. And number three, how can that person respond to a possible crime? In today's presentation, I'm really going to focus on those three different topics. What is human trafficking? What are some indicators that a young person might exhibit? And number three, what are some reporting mechanisms here in the United States? And of course, I'll go over some resources that are available to the general public, to everybody here watching this webinar. Everything that we do here on the campaign, has gone through the eyes of subject matter experts. We really don't do anything in a vacuum here. We rely on special agents, prosecutors, victim assistance specialists, forensic interviewers, anybody that has come into contact with this crime, whether in service providing, whether in law enforcement, whether in social work. We rely on all these different SMEs to directly communicate with this campaign and help us really develop and produce the most accurate and real materials in order for us to be able to, kind of give this back to the general public. We need everything here to be accurate, and we wouldn't be doing these sorts of trainings or have all these different materials without these subject matter experts that directly consult the campaign. Number two, partnerships. Partnerships are very important to this campaign because we cannot do this alone. The Blue Campaign cannot raise awareness about this international crime to everybody in the United States. So we're really relying on different partners, whether it's public partnerships, private partnerships, whether it's partnerships through Protect Us Kids, or whether it's partnerships with American Airlines or some other international airline or hotel chain. We rely on our partners to continue spreading this message outside of this webinar, outside of our trainings, outside of our website. We need everybody to continue talking about that, hey, human trafficking is happening, and there are things that us as regular people can do to help stop it. We don't have to be law enforcement. We don't have to be a prosecutor. We don't have to be a service provider. Everybody here can play a role. And that's what really partnerships help us do. Bring everybody to the table and help spread and reach more people. And I've kind of gone over this last sort of point here. Two foundational elements here on the campaign. One is trying to prevent the crime from happening. And the number one way to do that is through education. How can we prevent something that we do not understand? So this campaign really focuses on that education aspect of human trafficking, anti-human trafficking efforts. Number two, how can we protect people that are being exploited? The number one way to protect somebody is number one, implementing a victim-centered approach based on trauma-informed principles. What does that mean? It means being able to help that victim without continuing to re-traumatize them or add on to that trauma. So within this sort of audience, we're really focusing on industries that might already be coming into contact with a human trafficking victim. So a lot of, airports, bus stations, train stations, hotels, restaurants. We're working with all their staff in order to train them on how to appropriately respond to a possible case and what are those indicators that they might be experiencing or viewing within that hotel, within that airport, within that plane. So those two are vital foundational elements to this campaign. So now that you have a better understanding of what we do here on the Blue Campaign, I really want to get into what we're here to learn about, how to talk to youth about human trafficking. And of course, we cannot try to talk to somebody about this crime without ourselves understanding what it really is. So human trafficking is a crime that involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to either obtain labor or a commercial sex act. And this is the federal definition, the United States federal definition. So there are a lot of things that people think about human trafficking. Oh, somebody has to be kidnapped, or it's happening internationally. It's not happening in the United States. There are a lot of different misconceptions, and that's really what we're going to focus on also on this training. It's kind of debunking some of those misconceptions. But first, I want to go over those three elements: force, fraud, coercion. What are they? Because they are important to a human trafficking, kind of a case. How does law enforcement build a case against a human trafficker? They need at least one of these different elements. The only caveat that I'm going to say right now, which is very important to this type of audience, is if the person under the age of 18 is engaged in a sort of commercial sex act, they are automatically considered victims of human trafficking. Force, fraud, coercion are not needed. There is no such thing as an under 18-year-old prostitute. Under federal law, if they are committing commercial sex acts and they're a minor, they're automatically considered victims of human trafficking. Let's go over force, fraud, coercion. Force is going to be just that. It's going to be violence. It's going to be abuse, confinement. It could also be threats of violence. We refer to these types of individuals as guerrilla traffickers, somebody that uses that sort of abuse to get what they want from their victim, rather than there being some sort of exchange of goods or exchange of money. A common misconception is that human trafficking victims are not paid. Victims could be getting paid in a variety of different ways. One of them could be money. Another one could be luxury items, a new phone, clothing. It could be housing. It could be a variety of different things. But under violence, under this force, they're a lot of times under violence. They're getting beat to do what they want for that trafficker. That trafficker is beating them in order for to get services from them. Under fraud, we see two examples that we're also going to go over in more detail very shortly. But fraud could be false promises of love. We refer to these types of individuals as Romeo traffickers, somebody that makes their victim fall in love with them, that pretends that they are their world, that they should have full confidence in them, that they could tell them anything, that they're going to help them get through it all, and they're going to climb mountains together, and they're going to move them even. But the reality is that person is there to exploit their partner. And that's why we refer to them as Romeo traffickers, because they're using that disguise of love in order to get what they want from that person. Number two is going to be false promises of a well-paying job. Usually, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, especially in these hard to access areas like modeling or influencing. We see this a lot with modeling, these kind of random social media messages that come out. Hey, you have what it takes to be an Instagram model or an OnlyFans model. And then next thing you know, this person has given them their social security number or has given them an address or has signed a W-9 form at times. We've seen this, and they fall into this trap. And then next thing they know, they're getting exploited. They're getting some other forms of threats. So we see that a lot, those false promises of a well-paying job. Number three, coercion. Coercion can be a variety of different things, and really it's one of the main elements that we see in human trafficking cases. They all have some sort of coercion in them, whether it's blackmailing somebody with a private picture. A victim probably gave a picture to this person that they trusted that ended up being, somebody, a trafficker, and now they're using that picture to exploit them. So telling them, hey, if you don't do what we tell you to do, well, we're going to, blast this picture to all your friends. We're going to blast it to your family. We're going to put it on the internet. Everybody's going to know that you're dirty. Everybody's going to know that, you're giving out pictures of yourself. So they use that as blackmail. We also see this with people entering the country, maybe kind of in an informal way. We see that a lot of times they'll threaten people with deportation, threaten them with arrest in order to get this person to continue working or to work for them. They'll threaten them with arrest or deportation. We also see addiction, kind of dangling drugs or alcohol in front of somebody to get what they want from them. That is also a form of coercion. So that is the main element that we do see in these human trafficking cases. And when we think about human trafficking, it's not just sex trafficking. Yes, sex trafficking really takes, kind of center view. I don't know if, one of the main things that everybody's seeing on the news right now is P. Diddy, sex trafficking. It's everywhere. You turn on the TV, you turn on the radio, somebody's mentioning P. Diddy. So sex trafficking, yes, it's real. It's what makes the news. But there's also labor trafficking. So somebody getting used for labor against their will. And there's also domestic servitude. And these are people like stay-at-home nannies or some sort of housekeeper that they're using that labor to get, they're using that person to take care of their home or take care of their kids or, clean their home. So domestic servitude, labor trafficking, sex trafficking are all human trafficking. And who is this affecting? There is not a single profile for a victim of human trafficking. They could be any age, race, gender, socioeconomic status, racial background. It doesn't matter. There's not a single profile. I think one thing that is in common is vulnerabilities. So traffickers are trying to exploit vulnerabilities in people. And what you see on your screen, that economic instability, alcohol, substance abuse, immigration status, yeah, those are vulnerabilities. But vulnerabilities could also be gender identity, not knowing how to identify. Am I gay? Am I lesbian? Am I, transsexual? Those kind of identity issues can be a vulnerability in themselves for a young person. Not having close family networks, getting bullied. Really, the list kind of goes on. Dealing with homelessness, dealing with the criminal justice system from a young age. Those are all vulnerabilities that young people are going through of no fault of their own. They probably were born into these sorts of situations. But these vulnerabilities are what traffickers are trying to exploit. They're trying to figure out how can that kid and me get to a spot that I could get that kid to commit sex acts, or I can make that kid work for me. So they're trying to see whether it's a vulnerability of not having money. Well, a trafficker is going to try to appeal that. They're going to be like, hey, I can make you money. I've even heard sometimes that if a kid is not getting along with their parents and they're like, oh, I wish I didn't live here anymore. Traffickers have exploited that. Oh, you don't want to live with your parents? I could get you money and I could get you out of that house. You could come live with me even. And then next thing you know, that kid is missing. And that kid is nowhere to be found. And he's with this trafficker that is now exploiting them. So vulnerabilities and human trafficking victimization really go hand in hand. And who can a trafficker be? Just as a victim, there is not a single profile. A trafficker could be a complete stranger. It could be a so-called friend. As we went over that example of fraud, that Romeo trafficker, that trafficker could be somebody's boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife. It could be somebody that they trust with their whole life. It could be a family member. In the United States, and really, I'm sure this is international too, we have something called familial trafficking, which is a problem here. This is being born into a situation that you're being exploited as a toddler, as an infant. Your pictures are being sold on the dark web. You can't even consent to anything. You don't even know what's going on around you, but you're being exploited as baby. This is familial trafficking. This is literally parents, grandparents abusing and taking advantage of this kid. So to that kid, his traffickers are the people that are supposed to be closest to them. So really not a single profile either for a trafficker. And where are they reaching their victims? We're going to go over online safety because really in the digital sphere, it's a battleground. That is where we're seeing a lot of recruitment. That is where we're seeing a lot of, just bad actors trying to reach kids. They don't have to be traffickers. They could be, just, for a lack of a better word, just dirty people trying to get dirty things from innocent children. All right. But when we also look at human trafficking victimization, we do know that traffickers are going to try to meet people in places where it's normal to meet people. So bars, clubs, popular meeting areas such as the movie theaters, shopping centers, malls, these kind of areas where they know that if they congregate, they could kind of blend in and get to know somebody. But we also have heard that a trafficker is trying to reach their victim in areas where they know they are most vulnerable, outside of housing shelters, outside of halfway homes, outside of rehabilitation centers, juvenile detention centers, jails. They know that these people that are in these areas need some sort of help, whether it's monetary help, housing help, I don't want to say yes, they probably do need some sort of drug rehabilitation, but that trafficker is not there to get them that drug rehabilitation. They're there to get them high, continue getting them high. So they're trying to meet those people where they are at their lowest pretty much. And they know that they're going to be easy for them to lure them into this kind of human trafficking life. All right. So now that we really have an understanding of what human trafficking is, who is being affected by this, why are they being affected by this, force, fraud, coercion, let's kind of dive into some common misconceptions about this crime. And I'm only going to go over some high level kind of misconceptions. And this is the biggest one. The difference between smuggling and trafficking, they're huge. But a lot of people, and not even people, social media, news, I've heard both of these crimes being wrongfully used in a variety of different outlets. And human smuggling is a crime against a border based on transportation that requires a border crossing. So you're committing a crime against the border. It's also voluntary because people are paying upwards of like $15,000 to $20,000 to get smuggled into the United States. This is not cheap. They know what they are doing is illegal. They know that they are seeking out somebody to help them get smuggled into the country. They are signing up for this. They are literally signing up to get smuggled into the United States. They know that what they are doing is illegal. They know that it requires some sort of transportation or some sort of guide to help them illegally cross that border. Now, trafficking. Trafficking is a crime against a person based on exploitation, based on one of those elements that we went over: force, fraud, coercion. All right. No transportation is needed. If we look at the example of familial trafficking, that person is being exploited, is being abused right in their hometown. They didn't move anywhere. They were born in that city, in that neighborhood, and are being exploited within that neighborhood. No transportation needed for human trafficking. And of course, it's involuntary. Nobody is signing up to get trafficked. And and I bring this up because we do have times that a victim does not consider themselves a victim, or it takes counseling and it takes, repeated, it takes years sometimes for a victim to really one day admit or think of themselves as a victim of human trafficking. Imagine you're getting exploited by that person you love, that person that you have known maybe even years, probably known him your whole life, and now you're being used by that person. You're probably not going to consider yourself a victim of human trafficking. That person that you love wouldn't be doing that to you. But in reality, that person is a victim. They're being exploited. They're under one of those elements of force, fraud, coercion. Those false promises of love, unless we're the ones in love, we don't know, we don't know how that's going to feel. We don't know if we're going to admit that we're being used, that we're being exploited. And, especially when we look at young people, they don't even know what being taken advantage of might feel like. They haven't felt that before. So that fraud, force, coercion are really just kind of elements that really deal with a lot of psychological and emotional damage. But at the end of the day, human trafficking is involuntary. They didn't sign up for that. And whether they consider themselves victims at that moment or not, they are. A couple other myths here. Number one, victims will attempt to seek help in public. So reality is, number one, a victim might not seek help because they might not consider themselves a victim. They might not understand what they are going through. So why do they need help? Number two, they might not trust law enforcement at that phase of their life. Maybe they've been arrested on a prostitution sting, or maybe they've been arrested for paraphernalia or some sort of other drug possession. So trust in law enforcement might not be there. And that could also put blame on, I'll put blame on the trafficker too. We have cases where human traffickers are the ones telling their victims that law enforcement is not here to help you. They're the ones that want to arrest you. They're going to make your life even worse. And then a victim kind of gets in that thought process that, no, cops are bad. I can't go to law enforcement. They're not going to believe me. Also with family, why doesn't that person tell their family or some sort of business that they go to, like, hey, I'm being exploited, I'm being used, I'm being trafficked? Well, could be a variety of reasons. They might be under some sort of threats of force. They might think that they're going to get hurt. And a lot of times we have heard that a trafficker threatens them, threatens their family, threatens their neighbors, threatens their roommates. What it may be, they might be under those threats of force and that we might not know of. So they think that if they try to get help, they're probably going to end up hurt. Now, the second myth, that victims are only foreign-born individuals. We've gone over this. Please remember this. Anybody could be a victim of human trafficking. And this last myth, that victims are usually physically restrained, held in bondage, or otherwise physically abused, this is that Hollywood myth. This is the myth that we all see on movies. I don't know. A lot of people here might have, hopefully, seen the movie Taken. Hopefully people know here what the movie Taken is. It was with that guy, Liam Neeson. So this shows a very dramatized situation of human trafficking. Like, the guy might win Father of the Year, but at the end of the day, that is a very dramatized Hollywood version of what human trafficking is. It has all the misconceptions. It's happening abroad. It requires kidnapping. It's only happening to women. Somebody is, in a literal cell and they're being sold. So all the misconceptions are there, but the reality is that force is actually one of the least common indicators that we see in human trafficking victimization. A lot of the damage that we do see with human trafficking victims is psychological, is emotional. Those are forms of abuse that a person can't see with the naked eye, but that are inside. And those are some of the kind of most impactful injuries that could carry on with a person for years, literal years to come. All right. So, what can be some human trafficking indicators that a person might exhibit? So, when it comes to indicators, it's important to note that one indicator alone might not be enough for it to be considered human trafficking. Okay. Context and indicators go hand in hand because one indicator might say, oh, if a person is, seen being anxious or afraid to be in public, that could be a sign that they're human trafficking victims. Yes, that's true. Human trafficking victims might not want to make eye contact with people, might shy away from conversations, might, not want to talk to anybody because they're afraid that, their trafficker is going to get mad at them, or that the person that they're talking to might be asking too many questions that they don't know how to answer. So, yes, that might be an indicator, but it could also be somebody that's shy, that just does not want to talk to you, probably is not friendly at all, and does not want to have a conversation with you. And that's okay. I know people that are not friendly. They don't want to talk. And that doesn't make them human trafficking victims. But once you put context and once you put situational clues into the scenario, maybe some of these indicators might actually be worth exploring more, or worth, maybe following up with a question. Maybe that student that you're interacting with is showing some sort of drastic or dramatic changes in their behavior. And when we're talking dramatic, I'm talking about little Bob was, straight A student, okay? Never missed a class. He would go home on time. He would be at his extracurricular activities, and was just, one of those students that a teacher is really like, people should be more like little Bob. But then all of a sudden, this student is now missing class. Unexcused absences. Nobody knows where he's going. Now, they're also being caught running away from home. That person was never running away from home. They would love being at home with their family and spending time in family. Their grades are dropping. And maybe they've been seen around with somebody that kind of looks older than them, or has mentioned things like, oh, I'm going out with my friend. And then when you ask, where are you going? Bob doesn't have an answer about where they're going. Maybe they're just going somewhere. So when you start putting these little clues together and context starts like something's just really out of whack, that's when I should ask more questions. I should report, maybe talk to the school, maybe have a conversation with the parents directly. So a lot of different things that you could do. I'll go over some of the more federal law enforcement responses to possible cases. But yeah, these are some of those other indicators. One that we see, especially with parents. Parents got to keep this in mind. If your child is starting to show up with luxury items, if they're being bought things that are not coming from your wallet, and your kid is not working, that should definitely be some sort of indicator that, wow, who is buying this stuff for my kid? And number two, why are they buying this stuff for my kid? They're not their parents. Well, a lot of times with youth victimization, we see this process called grooming, which is the process that a trafficker is really getting to know the child, that they might be showering them with gifts, they're showering them with compliments, they're gaining their trust, they're gaining this child's trust. So eventually that child would do whatever they want because they've gained their trust now. And kids, these are kids. Remember, we're talking about kids here. So this is somebody that has a hard time saying no. Kids are also thinking that everybody's their friends, that everybody's friendly, especially on those video games, on social media. They don't really know who is behind the other screen, but, they think that they're their friends. So kids, just because of their age, run a very specific risk to meeting people that don't have their best interests in mind. What are some social indicators that you could have? Well, of course, having a romantic partner that is noticeably older, having a variety of different partners, or if you overhear a kid talking about boyfriend, girlfriends, or somebody buying them items, these are all indicators that, hey, your kid is probably meeting somebody that they should not be meeting. And the kind of list goes on, engaging in unhealthy sexual behavior or hearing about unhealthy sexual behavior, unhealthy coping behaviors. Maybe the student that you know or that kid that you've been mentoring or working with is now, kind of diving into drugs, showing up high, showing up drunk. We do see that traffickers use substances as a way to continue getting their victim to work for them. They might seem restricted from contacting family or friends. I think this is one very good indicator to go over. A lot of times, traffickers are trying to alienate their victims from all the people around them. They want them in a bubble. They want them to not have anybody else but the trafficker. So they're trying to alienate everybody around that victim, and it works. Victims might not contact anybody around them or might not want people to ask them questions because they might feel some sort of shame about what they've been doing. They might think that they're guilty of a crime. So they don't want to share about what is happening in their life. So that in itself, they're pushing the people that love them away from them. So if that person that is starting to push away people that were once, their close friend, their family member, their mentor, and now all of a sudden, since they've met this maybe a noticeably older person, now they're pushing away all these people that once were very close to them. Hey, that might be a reason for concern. And, as we go down this list, some of them, of course, they're going to need context. They might not seem to be in control of their own money. As I mentioned, we do have cases where traffickers hang on to their victims' personal items, whether it's money, cell phone, ID, passports. So a variety of different personal items that a person should have on their own person. If another person is handling all that, that could be a reason for concern as well. So remember, indicators go hand in hand with context. Now, reporting. And excuse me. Sorry about that. Okay. So reporting. What happens if you see that something that just doesn't look right, that just needs to be questioned or must be investigated? Or what happens if you already know somebody that might be going through this victimization, but maybe they don't want to report to law enforcement, but you still want to get them some sort of help. You still want to be able to direct them to resources. We like to bring up two different reporting mechanisms that are at your disposal if you're here in the United States. Number one, contact 911 if somebody's in immediate danger. Well, I guess three reporting. 911. If someone's in immediate danger, if you know you need to get help to somebody right away, call your local law enforcement, call 911, and at no time try to approach that trafficker or that potential victim yourself. You could raise suspicions, you could get somebody hurt, that trafficker might hurt you. So please always refer to reporting rather than you actually taking, the action yourself. All right. So one of the first hotlines that we like to bring up is HSI, Homeland Security Investigations. This is federal law enforcement. This is to get the crime investigated. This is to involve our victim assistance program. So victim assistance program, we have something called the VAS, which is the victim assistance specialist. Once a human trafficking situation is reported, it will get investigated. It might not be immediate, but it's important to really provide as much detail as possible when you're reporting a tip. Use terms like force, fraud, coercion. Tell them what you're seeing. Add descriptions of people and situations that you're seeing. It might be repeated instances that you're seeing the same thing and now you want to report. That's fine. Add as much detail as possible. And if you're comfortable reporting directly to HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, that's the tip line. You could also go online and try to report it another way via chat, via web form. The middle option is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. This is to this is operated by a non-governmental organization called Polaris. So they're an NGO, non-government, and not only will they, if the victim wants to report the crime to law enforcement, they could also engage law enforcement in the investigation. But say the victim does not want to go to law enforcement yet, but still needs some sort of help. This tip line is the one that will direct them to resources, to different services, whether it's housing, medical help. Maybe they might need that rehabilitation. Maybe they need, a safe home to go to, a shelter. They'll be able to connect that victim with those different resources. And once that victim is ready, they could then engage law enforcement and get them, law enforcement help. One caveat there: if the person that you are reporting a tip about is under the age of 18 years old, they're they have to report that to law enforcement. They are mandated reporters by law. So if the person is under the age of 18, all of these are mandated reporting. And one that I don't have up here, but I think is also important, and hopefully we get to do a after action email, is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. For short, it's NCMEC. This is to report instances of possible human trafficking, child abuse, a variety of different crimes to children. They have a tip line as well, and a variety of different reporting mechanisms. So that's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. All right. So now that you really understand this crime, you as the adult, now you feel that it's, you want to do something. We want to have this conversation with young people in our lives. But how do we do that? How do we do it in a way that a child is going to understand us, is not going to tune out from the conversation? So how do we do that? Well, here we have our do's and don'ts. All right. Let's start with do talk about exploitation. Focus conversations on what it means to be taken advantage of and what that may feel and look like, what it feels like to be taken advantage of. Provide examples of, this sort of exploitation, such as those job offers that seem too good to be true, or, maybe an online romantic relationship that's moving too fast. So use those kind of examples in these conversations. Try to not use those crime specific languages such as human trafficking. That's not going to resonate with a young person, and they might even tune themselves out from that conversation that is using too much crime specific language. Number 2, do talk about protective factors. Focus conversations on how a young person can protect themselves and how they can look out for their friends and their peers. Encourage that young person to recognize what they are good at. Encourage them to think about their future goals and the value that they are bringing to their families and their friends. Don't talk about risk factors. Many times, a young person has no control over the risk factors that they are affected by, and really focusing discussions on risk factors may make that young person feel singled out. They may make them vulnerable and unable to protect themselves. And those risk factors are some of those vulnerabilities that we talked about. Risk factors, vulnerabilities, same thing. So don't focus on those risk factors in that child's life. You might know them as, you're the person talking to that kid. You're aware of all the things that this child is going through, but don't focus on that. Rather, build up those protective factors. Number 3, continue using empowering language. Use language that it focuses on highlighting the strengths of that young person that you work with. Emphasize that they are in control of their own decisions. They could say no to that offer that sounds too good to be true. They could say no to that partner that is, that person that might be in their DMs telling them that they're cute and that they want to continue talking about, kids. All right. Let them know that they're in control of their decisions, especially when they're presented with opportunities that seem too good to be true. Don't use victimizing language. Using language that invokes fear and highlights weaknesses may discourage that young person from taking any protective actions. All right. Do use language that resonates with youth. You know how young people are talking nowadays. The bros and I don't know. I feel old even talking about how kids talk about nowadays, and I'm only 31. Language changes by the day, it seems like. So if you know how kids are communicating nowadays, continue using that language. All right. You're familiar with how they're having everyday conversations. They might be talking to you in a certain way. Continue using that sort of casual language that you're comfortable with using with that child. Don't use textbook language. Using formal or textbook language, as we say, the young people are not going to relate to it, and it's going to just make it harder for them to really pay attention to what you're trying to say about exploitation. And Do continue expressing that you care and are concerned about their safety, especially if that young person shares information with you about a situation that sounds like exploitation they may be experiencing. Start by listening to them and letting them know that you care about what they are going through. But the most important thing is listening. Don't focus on questioning their situations. Let professionals who are trained in trauma response ask specific questions about their situation. Asking too many questions initially may also inadvertently place some sort of blame on them and then make them less receptive to help. They might feel shame. So there are people that are trained to have these conversations with young people. So just continue to be that listening ear and that support by that child's life. Lifestyle factors. There's sometimes that young people just do not have examples of healthy relationships in their life, and this can make them more vulnerable to human trafficking. So, understanding of what a relationship should look like for a young person, that could be distorted by what they're seeing in movies, what they're hearing about in music, what they see from their friends in the relationship. They might come from a unfunctional home. They might come from a home that experiences violence, that their parents probably beat each other, and that's what they think a relationship looks like. Or they might be, watching some toxic movie or show, and then that's what their perception of a relationship is. So when interacting with a young person, it's important to challenge the ideas and emphasize what a healthy relationship can look like. Conversations could center around respect and how that should play out in the relationship that they have with their family, with their peers, or with their own romantic partners. So these are some of those characteristics of healthy relationships that can be emphasized with these young people. Open communication. You should never be scared to talk to your partner about anything. That's your partner. There should be full confidence and trust. So open communication both ways. Number two, respect for privacy. You do not need to be with your partner 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they should not have any access to personal belongings such as your phone or your money. So there is a respect for privacy with a healthy relationship. Of course, the idea that violence is never okay. Nobody should be putting their hands on you. Very important. Nobody, not your partner, not your friend, not, I don't know, I want to say not your parent either, but I come from a Spanish household and I've gotten a sandal or two to my behind. So let's forget about that one. But violence is never okay. Your partner should never be, putting their hands on you. And the most important one in my book is consent. We live in an age where kids are starting to engage sexually at a very young age, and talking about consent is just really kind of important now. So let them know that it's only okay to engage in any type of sexual behavior if both parties have agreed and are comfortable and desire to do so. And also let them know that it's okay to take away that consent. It's okay to change your mind about wanting to have sex, and a safe partner should respect that. So consent, very important when emphasizing what a healthy relationship is. Now, social media safety. Here I'm showing you an example of something that was reported once upon a time to one of our tip lines. All right. This is a Instagram direct message from a random account, and a lot of the things are blurred out here because they were all real, and this account was real. So, hey, we found your profile and we think you have great potential. Have you ever thought about starting an OnlyFans? For those of you that might not be aware, OnlyFans is a digital platform that you can monetize yourself. That you are the product, pretty much. You are selling your image online. Well, this person is a model manager at so-and-so, and they actually have another spot for a model on their team. Oh my God. They're an agency based out of Switzerland. So this kind of, they're in Europe. That's all you got to know. They're in Europe, and they've already helped a couple of girls to quit their job, travel around the world, and buy designer stuff, only working 1 to 3 hours a day. Ladies and gentlemen, sign me up. What am I doing right here? This sounds like a dream. And you know what? As an adult, this sounds shady as all heck. But to a kid, to a young person that might be always on their phone and might already know what OnlyFans is, They click on those websites that are blurted out, and they're going to see these testimonials of girls saying, oh, this person changed my life. I've only worked 1 hour a day. Look, I just got to get on my webcam and talk to these folks, and I'm rich. This offer might seem, tempting, especially this person that has 2,000 followers. They look real. They have 2,000 followers and they have 9 posts. So they're posting, this is them. They might actually reach back out and share some sort of information with that message. But of course, some of the red flags that we see as adults that, of course, know that this does not seem right. It's a promise of a job in a field typically hard to break into. Those job perks do not match the level of effort, those travel, designer items, working 1 to 3 hours a day. No work experience needed. Usually, if you're like in modeling or something, you need some sort of, resume or like headshot resume or like who have you worked with in the past. And of course, the company is in a foreign country. I went into this website and IP address was, in some other country. So you could just tell that everything was fake. There was typos all over the website. Yeah, they had these big fancy graphs and, people smiling and be like, oh, so-and-so changed my life. I'm so thankful to this company. But once you really look into it with a very close eye, you see a lot of errors, especially with typos and, where they have their company registered in and all that. So important to talk about online safety. Look, predators, human traffickers, there's just a lot of bad people that could gain access to young people online because they're not always aware of how dangerous online environments can be or how to keep themselves safe when they are online. The predators are oftentimes stalking these online meeting places such as chat rooms, social media sites to identify and lure their victims. So these are some of those tips that you could use, that you could talk about with a young person. Encourage them to keep their profile, personal information private. Don't accept friend requests from people you might not know in real life. Let them know, and this is an important one, that if they share a personal photo, and I've heard some very sad stories about this one, that kids have shared some sort of intimate photo with somebody they met online, and then that photo gets leaked to the internet. We've even heard of instances where those kids commit suicide because they know that their photos are now all over the web and they don't know what to do about them. That organization that I brought up, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has a program called Take It Down, where you insert the URL of that child's picture from the web, and they have a team of volunteers from around the United States, and I think even the world, that scrub the internet of all those underage images. So there is hope and there is help if a kid has already given that sort of image to somebody online. All right. So other things, do research on a job offer that seems too good to be true, and then if a kid is meeting somebody that they thought was somebody else, and then they find out that this person is not who they say they are online, please encourage that young person to let you know. And of course, always trust your instincts. I want to just bring up a short video. Do I have time? Let me go over my last slide, and then I'm going to go back to this video because one thing, I hope that we have audio. But first, let me go over job promises, okay? So job promises, also very important to talk to young people about. They might not know about what that kind of employment, steps look like. They might not know what a CV is yet. They might not know what a resume is. So we have instances where those job promises ask them for pictures, ask them for their home address. They'll ask them for their social security number right away. So a lot of different, sort of scam tactics that these fake job promises also entail. So it's important to have conversations about what a real job promise looks like, what they're going to ask you. They're probably not going to be direct messaging you on Snapchat or TikTok. This is probably not going to happen. So important to let them know what these kind of job promises entail and what they don't. All right, let me go ahead and try to share this video. If it does not have audio, please let me know, okay? And then I will just give the website where we could find this video. So the Blue campaign, a big part of our campaign is also creating awareness materials and resources that anybody can access on our website. And this is one of those videos that we made because we heard a lot from forensic interviewers and our partners at NCMEC that video game sort of grooming, video game, just people trying to get their next victim on video games is going up, and that they have more reported cases of kids being exploited online. So we created this animated youth video series that has to do with video games.
Oh, Carter, you're on fire! No joke. And hey, have pity on the new guy. Not gonna happen. Oh, nice. Yeah!
Okay, pro gamer. Dinner time.
Gotta go, guys. Hey, it's Carter, right? Mm-hmm. I think I go to your old school. Wanna join my chat and play some PvE later? Yeah, I'll be right back.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Dad. We have a new guy in our squad. His KDR is insane.
Huh.
Yo, I'm back. Nice. Hey, I don't recognize you from school. Did you guys move? Yeah, we're in Westlake now. Cool. Well, if we're gonna team up, you can't be looking like a scrub. Here, take these credits and unlock the Dark Void skin. No way! That's worth like $60. Thanks, bro. The squad is gonna be jealous. Oh, my girlfriend's coming soon. Hey, are you with someone? No. Wow, Carter the loner has big evening plans with his parents. Nah, my folks are busy. They let me do whatever. Hey, I think I know a girl that'd be into you. Snap some pics and I'll show her. Wow, you're joking, right? Come on, show some skin. Go harder, bro. Show the girl what she wants to see. Carter. Nice. That's more like it. Kinda stupid, though. You know I'm showing these to your friends over at Westlake Middle School, right? Your life ends when I hit send. What? Are you kidding? No! Relax. As long as you do me a little favor, I can make sure nobody sees these pics again.
Honey, I'm worried about Carter. He's always online with that new friend. Yeah, I know. I'll talk to him on the way to school tomorrow. Good. Something doesn't feel right. It reminds me of an article I saw the other day about online predators. I'm gonna look it up. Send me the link when you find it.
Causing someone under the age of 18 to engage in a commercial sex act, regardless of using force, fraud, or coercion, is human trafficking under U.S. law. If you suspect a child is being exploited, call or text the National Human Trafficking Hotline or submit a report to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children Cyber Tip Line. Call local law enforcement if someone is in immediate danger.
All right, so there is a part 2. It's on our website, which I will share recently. So we created these videos as a response to people that are just giving us these sort of real stories about kids being exploited online and traffickers using these popular sort of gaming platforms such as Roblox, Fortnite, to try to meet other people, to try to meet children. So there are a lot of different ways that you could, as an adult, create that environment to make the victims feel safe enough to get help, to try to tell you about things that they might be going through. So number one is acknowledge your role in trying to prevent human trafficking in your community. Know that you might be that trusted adult in that young person's life. And being that trusted adult, this kid might feel comfortable in talking to you about things that they are going through. So number one is playing that role. Number two, create internal human trafficking protocols, whether it's for your organization, whether you're in a church setting or some sort of house of worship, if you're in a volunteer-led organization, what it may be, create some sort of protocol where you know who to be able to report to. There's also a lot of different task forces that you could participate in, especially if you're in an organization, NGO, community organization. So find out who those players are. Find out who are the people that are already involved in human trafficking prevention and awareness in your community. And, probably establish a line of communication through that. We have an entire web page dedicated to youth resources on youth exploitation, how to protect yourself. This is where you could find all of our resources, our videos, and different tools that can help you and kids understand this crime more. Please, that QR code should work. If technology works with us, good. And let me just double check. You know, sometimes we're at the mercy of technology, and unfortunately, sometimes technology is not going in our favor. But it looks like it's working, so that's a good sign. This is one of our prevention poster series that we have online where people could order in the United States and the territories could order this online. This is a prevention poster series. As I mentioned, kids have a hard time saying no. So we have an entire poster series that shows a sort of phone conversation. You know, everything from, hey, I got a summer job for you, or hey, you're really cute. Like, you know, send me a picture. Just different conversations that kids have came across before. We've put them on posters and letting kids know that they have a voice. They could say no to these kinds of offers. We have this series available in Spanish and English. And a lot of this presentation today has came from our online guidebook called How to Talk to Youth About Human Trafficking. This is available on our website for download. Anybody could access this. It's a free resource. As a matter of fact, everything we do here on the Blue Campaign is free. All of our resources, organizations, individuals, you could order materials in bulk directly from our website, including speakers. If somebody is interested in a Blue Campaign speaker, please feel free to reach out to me. I would be more than happy to facilitate a similar training for your organization, for your group, what it may be. All of that is free of charge. And then this is where you could contact us. Right there is our email, bluecampaign@hsi.dhs.gov. That is our website where you could find all of our resources, dhs.gov/Blue Campaign. Also, feel free to just Google Blue Campaign. We're going to pop up. We pay a lot of money to Google, so, you know, we better be top 3 in those Google search results. And follow us on social media. We do a lot of interactive sorts of content, especially leading up to January. That's Human Trafficking Prevention Month. We do a lot of just neat polls. We bring out new information. We release new tools and resources. So if you're not already following us, that is at DHS Blue Campaign on X, Instagram, and Facebook. I will stop there. If there's any questions, I don't know if you all have been taking questions or not, but I know we got a little bit of time.
Yeah, so our next one starts very shortly, Diego.
Okay.
But this has been absolutely fantastic. A wealth of information. I wish you had a disclaimer at the beginning saying, please, keep your Alka-Seltzer or Tums close at hand because it can make you a little bit nauseous during the presentation.
Sorry, yeah, it's heavy content.
It's tough content at times. But it's very important content for sure, because the fact that this is happening and continues to happen is it's very, very scary. And I can say on behalf of the Protect Us Kids Foundation, I want to thank you and the department's service to the communities. And this has been we look forward to continuing the collaboration with you and the DHS on this topic.
Likewise, this is a great partnership. So just thank you so much for having me and the Blue Campaign here today. This is a very important conversation. So we appreciate you opening the space to us.
Thank you, Diego. Have a great day.
Likewise. Thank you.
Bye.